Hey, my name is Gregan, and I've been doing a lot of content recently where I've been analysing replays live on stream and uploading them to YouTube for you guys. A lot of you ask questions about how I do certain parts of the analysis, like for example, this up here. And in this video I'm going to tell you everything that I do, and with links in the description on how to analyse a replay like Gregan. Okay guys, so the first things first for you is to always analyze with your game in borderless. Now, it doesn't really matter hugely, but if you're recording on something like OBS like I am right now, if it's borderless, when I tab out and I tab over to this, for example, it still remains there. If you don't do that, it gets really complicated when you're doing analysis stuff, especially when we start getting the pens involved, right? So first tool I'm going to show you is actually the pen. So a lot of people ask how I draw on the game. So it's just a borderless game where this is just an extension that works on any computer. It's a thing called Epic Pen. I've subscribed to it so I can use it for things like this. And it allows you to draw on the screen. There is ways you can get better with it, but for me, I pretty much just use the pen tool here, and I just change the colors because that's all I really need. You can delete and you can erase stuff as well, just like this. And you can make it thicker and thinner. So if you've ever seen me do a thicker or thinner line, that's what that is. But ultimately, it's just an on-screen pen tool. So once you got used to Epic Pen, there's lots of other tools that I use that all use Bakkesmod. If you've not downloaded Bakkesmod, then it's one of the most important tools on the computer to add to your game, to modify your game, and you want to download it here first. Then what I've done is I've gone through the various plugins that are on the Bakkesmod plugin page. So you can look here and you can search for various plugins. So if there's anything you've ever thought about using, that's the place to look for it. And there is one tool that I'm going to go through now. And unfortunately, this is one that you have to find someone who knows how to make things. You might be able to work it out yourself if you're a smart person. I'm not smart enough to do it. I got a guy called Yakubo to make it for me. And that's using the thing called the SOS plugin. So the SOS plugin is used by all esports broadcasts. The RLCS, I'm pretty sure, uses this. It's what I use on my streams to get the overlay up whenever I'm analyzing stuff. So SOS is used for that. And essentially, this is where that introduction map that I showed you is using the SOS plugin. So it tracks location data and like event data that happens throughout the game, which you can read up on down here. I don't know how to use this stuff. I just have someone else do it for me. So if you want to use this stuff, you have to be able to do some coding and web browser correction stuff. So this is the window I get whenever I open the SOS plugin on my side. And so I can change the name of the series here, and the team names you can do manually or automatically, and it auto hides overlays between games. You can see here, this is the overlay from the last replay that was loaded. But if we do just go into game and we go profile, replays, let's get the one of when I tried to play like cash. You see there, automatically comes up. Because it's blue and orange team, it shows it as blue and orange, shows boost amounts, and this can also create mini-map like the one you saw in the introduction. So if I click on the tabletop overlay, this was something I got personally made where I could get all these different tools added to it. So I can change the player codes, were coded by Yakubo. I don't actually know how they work, but basically the faster you go, the bigger the cone is. The team triangle just links up the location of all your teams. So this is all done using the data from the game. It's not actually produced by the SOS plugin. And the boost pads, this is just like a visual thing. I don't actually know if they're exactly where they're meant to be, but it sort of shows vaguely where the boost pads are. And then the reason why you saw it without the green screen around it is because that's the design style I went for, so that when I go over to the analysis screen, it shows it like this, right? So you can see how it kind of like gets rid of all the green screen area and keeps the gameplay going like that. I don't actually use this anymore because I've used a different tool that's easier to use and it makes more sense to people. This is quite complicated to switch in and out of. So we'll get onto that in a little bit, but that's the SOS plugin. I can't give you mine, but you can find someone if you're doing a high-level coaching or production stuff, you can find someone in the Bakkesmod community who can make you an SOS plugin. So we mentioned about Bakkesmod plugins. So there's a few different Bakkesmod plugins that I use. This one I'll start with first, the BallChasing Replay Player. It's the easiest one to get. You just install it, and it means when you go over to BallChasing, which is one of my favorite sites to use, which I'll get onto in a bit, it just adds this little play button here, so you don't have to download the replays and add them into your files. You can take them directly from the BallChasing website. So if you've ever seen that play button and been like, I don't have that in my game, that's why. So this next plugin is one that I've been using a bit recently, and I mentioned how I don't really use the overlay map version. It's because you can use this plugin here to create location data just by the tap of a single button. So I've mapped a few buttons using these commands that are below to try and set up fun in-game locations. So I'll show you some of those now. So if you look here on my bindings on the Bakkesmod plugin, I've created 4 different numbers. And I could definitely create more, but for now, these are the only ones I've used. So I've put 5 as the straight above look, and this is where I basically replicate the mini-map thing that I showed you earlier. If on some maps this isn't a great angle and it doesn't show the 3D depth of the game, so you can show this angle, which is actually one inspired by McLando from Knights. Whenever he watched scrims, he would fly up into this location, and that was where I got the idea to use this, because there's a tool that allows you to go to any location on the pitch. I also have blue side and orange side equivalent, so you can just see anything that's going on. So right now it's in the blue side, so you can see the shape of the defense and how the offense looks. And this shows the midfield boosts, which are quite important to the offense. So it was quite a good location there if you're ever seeing a team under pressure for a while. So that's using the camera controls, and as I mentioned, you can create your own bindings using these commands here. And if I can work it out, you can work it out too, using the Spectator commands here. It felt a bit like Minecraft, right? Like Minecraft coding to create new positions. So this next tool is one that I don't use that often, but it's quite good as a coaching tool to help show people how speed works in the game. So it creates this little speedometer at the bottom of your game. It's quite nice just to have every now and again. I don't actually know if it works in replay, so we're going to find that out right now. But it is just a nice little speedometer. So there we go. So you can have it on while spectating. So if we just switch to player view, let's have a watch from this player's point of view. And so it shows speed quite nicely. It shows the thresholds that are really important for everyone and can help people understand, especially stuff like wall dashes. It was really useful in my wall dash video to be able to show the changes in speed that wall dashes can create. So that's all the Bakkesmod plugins. Now the last thing I wanted to show that I use in my analysis videos a lot is BallChasing, which is an amazing website that can show you all the things you need to know about a game that's happened. And it's also a really good place for the RLCS to store their replays. So I'll actually put the link not just for BallChasing, but specifically this link here to show you the RLCS 22-23 replays, where as we were in the recent North American final between Gen G and FaZe. Now, what this is really good for is it not only creates individual game data, but it can create compiled data. So for example, we could look in the most recent North Regional main event and look at all of the players across the event with all of their data here. And you can do things like ordering the data by clicking at the top. It feels very similar to a lot of spreadsheets / tables that you might have used before. You can do it by games, which is really useful if you want to compare teammates and so on. And the different categories in here that I tend to look at the most. So in a single game, I'll look at this data here to get like the big numbers, like see who's getting a lot of shots and goals and so on. It also shows you the demos, which is really useful. And what I tend to do as well is I tend to use shots conceded to see how many shots are taken by a team. So you can look at, Gen G shots conceded actually shows FaZe's total shots as a team, but you can get team data as well, where you go on this page here and you'll get the team data. So you can see like here, shots conceded is the opposite of shots. But generally I only look at player data because the team data is very specific scenarios and you can kind of gauge it from looking at this. Shooting percentage is just like all of these stats are quite self-explanatory, and I will do a whole video going through all the different stats and what they show. Now, one thing I don't use much on stream because it's not as useful for analysis of teams, but more so analysis of individual players, is if you go into an individual replay, so like this one here, you do get access to more tables and more data from one single game. So you can get things like this, which visualize the data a bit more, and you get tables, and then if you scroll down to the bottom, you get the same sort of data as you do on the other way of looking at it. But it does also show you things like heat maps, so you can see generally where players are moving on the pitch. For the most part, this doesn't show a huge amount, but it can show quite a lot on some players. And then you can also get, I think there's a 3D replay viewer, which I don't tend to use, but it's very similar to some of the stuff that I've shown you before. It's kind of similar to the SOS plugin, right? So that shows that there. And then you can also get all your typical stats as mentioned before. You can get camera settings as well out this, which I use for the play like a Pro series that I have, and you get some settings as well. So that's using ball chasing. If you want to download replays, which now you've got the ball chasing replay player, you don't need to necessarily do, but say you wanted to download some replays and do your own data analysis on them by uploading it into your own folders, or if you're working with, you know, some players or whatever it was, then you would be able to download it using this button here. If you want to do group downloads, if you want to download, say, a whole section, you have to become a patron, which I am a patron when I'm logged in, and you can download like up to 250, up to 50, depending on what patron tier you're at. But for the most part, this is an amazing free tool made by Can't Fly, an absolute legend, made it all by themselves, and definitely support them if you can, because they've created one of the most useful tools in Rocket League esports. So like I said, if you want to know what the stats mean in more detail, I'd be down to do a whole video where I break down what all the different stats show and what you should look out for based off of them. No stat shows the full picture. You have to use stats together and also with your visual eye on the gameplay, but it can help go into a game to help you look out for certain stuff. So if there's anything you think I've missed, ask the question down below and I'll try and reply to them. But this is pretty much everything I use when looking at replays. Obviously, there's the aspect that I have my own trained eye that I look at in replays, and the way I put these all together using the tools like the pen as well as the different camera angles, you can start compounding them all together and really get a beautiful way of analyzing gameplay for your players or for your viewers. And this is how you analyze a replay like Gregan.